telling you things that we can't tell you. We're not going to say everything because we have things that nobody even knows about. Nobody has even a clue about. And we don't want to talk about that, and there's no reason to. But you'll be seeing a lot of things. So we're going to have a pretty open news conference, and we have to make sure that Venezuela doesn't go bad again. It went bad. You know, it was a great country 20 years ago, and now it's horrible. Remember, I used to say that if they get elected, the other side, the people that we're talking about, if they get elected in our country, it will be Venezuela on steroids. Do you remember that? I used to say that all the time, Charlie, right?
Indeed.
We would have been Venezuela on steroids, meaning we would have been a bigger version of Venezuela. But the end result, we would have been a failed nation. Had they gotten elected, we would have been a failed nation. So I'll get ready for a news conference. And,
real quickly before we let you go, though, can you tell us where Maduro and his wife are right this second?
Well, they'll be heading to New York. You know, they were indicted in New York, but they've killed a lot of people. Remember that. They killed a lot of people. And
a lot of Americans.
Even people in their own country. They killed a lot of people to maintain power. He's a very vicious person.
Well, President Trump, I'm incredibly grateful to you for coming on this morning. Thank you very much, and thank you for your time. We know that you've got a lot on your plate these days, but we're very appreciative.
Before. And we had a dead country a year and a half ago. We had a dead country. This country was dead with Biden and with that group of people. And if we had that group extended through Kamala, this country would have been dead. But we had a dead country.
She was the border czar.
Well, now look at the border. We have nobody coming in through the border anymore. Look at that. So, you know, that's right. The border czar. She was our border czar. She would have been worse as a president than she was as a border czar. So, anyway, which is pretty bad. Have a good time.
Tonight, global attention remains fixed on a rapidly developing and extraordinarily sensitive situation involving Venezuela, the United States, and the broader international community, following a cascade of reports, statements, and intelligence indicators suggesting that Venezuelan President Nicolás Maduro may have been taken into U.S. custody during a covert multinational law enforcement and security operation, an event that, while not yet formally confirmed through a single definitive government announcement, has nonetheless generated an unprecedented level of corroborating signals, including restricted airspace notices, unusual federal aviation movements, heightened security activity at multiple U.S. facilities, and synchronized messaging from senior American political figures, most notably former President Donald Trump, who publicly characterized the operation as amazing and could not have been better, language that immediately intensified speculation and scrutiny from diplomats, military analysts, legal scholars, and foreign governments alike, as observers attempt to separate verified facts from conjecture while assessing the profound implications such an action would carry under international law, regional stability, and U.S. foreign policy doctrine, particularly given Venezuela's long history of political turbulence, economic collapse, sanctions enforcement, and contested leadership legitimacy dating back more than a decade. According to multiple sources familiar with U.S. interagency operations, the reported action, if accurately described, would represent the culmination of years of intelligence gathering involving the Drug Enforcement Administration, the Federal Bureau of Investigation, elements of U.S. Southern Command, and allied intelligence services in Latin America and Europe, all operating under legal frameworks tied to existing indictments filed in U.S. federal courts that accuse Maduro and senior Venezuelan officials of narcotics trafficking, corruption, and money laundering, charges that Caracas has repeatedly dismissed as politically motivated, while insisting Maduro remains Venezuela's lawful head of state, a claim recognized by some governments and rejected by others, underscoring the fractured international consensus that has defined Venezuela's diplomatic status since the disputed 2018 election. What has elevated this episode beyond routine geopolitical friction is the apparent operational sophistication described by defense analysts reviewing available data, including the reported use of electronic countermeasures, cyber disruption of communications nodes, and rapid extraction protocols designed to limit civilian exposure, all of which align with contingency plans previously outlined in declassified U.S. military doctrine for high-value target apprehensions conducted outside declared war zones. Yet experts caution that even the most precise operation cannot be evaluated solely on tactical execution, as the strategic consequences, both intended and unintended, often unfold over months or years, especially in countries where power structures are deeply embedded within military, intelligence, and economic networks, rather than concentrated in a single individual. At the same time, Venezuelan state media has remained conspicuously inconsistent, alternating between routine programming, patriotic messaging, and brief statements asserting national sovereignty, while offering no verifiable proof of Maduro's current location, a silence that analysts note is itself unusual for a government historically quick to showcase its leader in moments of perceived threat, prompting speculation that internal uncertainty or fragmentation may be affecting official communications. Adding to the complexity, several Latin American governments have issued carefully worded responses emphasizing respect for international law, the importance of due process, and the need for regional stability, while avoiding direct confirmation or denial of the reports, a diplomatic posture that reflects both the sensitivity of the situation and the desire to avoid premature alignment before facts are conclusively established, particularly for nations that have previously served as intermediaries in negotiations between Caracas and Washington. Within the United States, reaction has been sharply divided, with supporters framing the operation, if confirmed, as a long overdue enforcement of criminal indictments against an authoritarian leader accused of overseeing widespread corruption and human rights abuses, while critics warn that forcibly apprehending a sitting head of state risks setting a dangerous precedent that could erode international norms, invite retaliatory actions against U.S. officials abroad, and further destabilize an already volatile region. Concerns echoed by several international law experts who point out that while domestic indictments may carry moral weight, their extraterritorial enforcement against recognized leaders occupies a legally gray zone that depends heavily on the consent, cooperation, or collapse of local authority structures. Economic analysts, meanwhile, are closely monitoring energy markets, noting that Venezuela holds some of the world's largest proven oil reserves, and that any abrupt leadership change, especially one involving external intervention, could significantly impact global oil prices, investment strategies, and sanctions regimes, particularly if a transitional authority seeks rapid reintegration into international markets, while renegotiating debts, contracts, and nationalization policies that have driven away foreign capital for years. Complicating this picture further are humanitarian considerations, as Venezuela's population has already endured severe shortages of food, medicine, and basic services, leading to one of the largest migration crises in modern history, and aid organizations warn that political upheaval, regardless of its stated objectives, risks worsening conditions on the ground if not paired with immediate stabilization measures and international coordination. Intelligence experts also emphasize the possibility that any reported apprehension of Maduro may have involved internal cooperation or negotiated surrender, rather than a purely kinetic operation, citing patterns from past cases in which insiders facilitated access in exchange for guarantees, asylum, or leniency. A theory that, if substantiated, would raise profound questions about loyalty, morale, and future power struggles within Venezuela's security forces, particularly the armed forces and intelligence services that have historically served as the regime's backbone. President Trump's enthusiastic public remarks have further fueled debate, with supporters praising decisive leadership and critics warning that premature celebration risks undermining operational security, judicial integrity, and diplomatic leverage, especially if subsequent developments contradict early narratives or reveal a more complex chain of events. legal scholars are also examining potential next steps, including jurisdictional challenges, extradition proceedings, evidentiary standards, and the rights afforded to any detainee under U.S. and international law, noting that high-profile cases involving foreign leaders often become protracted legal battles that test the resilience and credibility of judicial systems. As the story continues to unfold, media organizations face their own challenge, balancing the public's demand for timely information with the responsibility to avoid amplifying unverified claims, a tension evident in the careful phrasing now adopted by many outlets that rely on phrases such as "according to sources," "reportedly," and "pending confirmation," while piecing together satellite imagery, flight tracking data, official statements, and historical context to provide viewers with the clearest possible picture. Ultimately, whether this episode is remembered as a watershed moment in the enforcement of international accountability or as a cautionary tale about the limits of unilateral action will depend on what follows next, how transparently authorities communicate, how responsibly power transitions are managed, whether violence is avoided, and whether the Venezuelan people see tangible improvements in governance, economic opportunity, and personal security. And as the world waits for definitive confirmation and further details, one reality remains clear. The situation has already reshaped diplomatic calculations, reignited debates over sovereignty and justice, and underscored how quickly global order can be tested when intelligence operations, political rhetoric, and unresolved national crises converge on the international stage.